Hello everybody, this is Roberto Parker with Innovative Sports Training. Hope everybody's having a great day today. Now this is another one of my video blog series. Today I'm going to talk about targeting and testing for adrenal fatigue. Now I've spent a lot of time on this the last year or so, doing different talks and presentations and talking to people in my business about adrenal fatigue. You hear a lot about adrenal fatigue, but I'm going to go into some real core, peel away the layers type of specifics as much as I can today without getting too far into the weeds scientifically, because I don't want to bore you certainly. What are the signs of fatigue? Anxiety is one, brain fog, stubborn belly fat, blood sugar issues, which can feed into insulin problems, more specifically insulin resistance. Catabolic issues. The adrenals make this stuff called cortisol, which is your stress hormone. It is a stress hormone. And catabolic means you're eating away tissues, which is the opposite of anabolic, in which you're adding tissues, you're building tissues. You don't want to be catabolic. You want to be more anabolic. Now, there are times when you should be catabolic, but typically you want to be anabolic. Steroidal hormones are weakening to pregnenolone steal. Now, in my last video blog, I went over that a little bit. I'm not going to go in real detail on that. You can check out this video right here, and it's called Robbing Peter to Pay Paul, and you can learn a lot more about pregnenolone steal. Now this chart here is aspects of steroidal hormone balance. Look at the very center of this. Steroid hormones are ones you probably have heard of: testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, aldosterone, which is more of a mineral hormone but still part of the steroidal hormone family, DHEA, pregnenolone, and cortisol. Now, here's a problem. When that middle area becomes dysfunctional, and you can see it there, adrenal dysfunction, it feeds into all these other areas. It also enhances these other areas when things are perfectly balanced too, I should say. Musculoskeletal health, neural tissue health, endocrine health, fat and protein metabolism health, detoxification capacity, eicosanoid modulation, which is related to pro and anti-inflammatory properties of the body, carbohydrate metabolism. It affects all of these other areas that are attached directly to hormones. Now, it can be good or it can be bad. If they're balanced, it's good. If it's out of balance, it is not good. Now, DHEA is also mentioned in my Robbing Peter to Pay Paul video. I advise you to go check that out. DHEA is dihydroepiandrosterone. It is made in the adrenal cortex, gonads, and brain, mainly in the adrenal cortex, which is the outer layer of the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys. It promotes growth and repair of protein. So it's very, very important that DHEA remains an anabolic property of the body, in that it promotes growth and repair of protein. In other words, it adds good lean body tissue, good lean tissue to the body, which the body needs. The most prevalent circulating steroidal hormone. Depressed DHEA is typically a sign of, there it is, adrenal dysfunction. It is an anabolic hormone. There it is again, anabolic. Low amounts are related to pregnenolone steal. Once again, check out that video. It counters everything that cortisol does. And let's take a look at cortisol. Cortisol is a glucocorticoid hormone. That's just a nice long fancy term for glucose hormone, because it helps in stability of blood sugar and shuttling sugars to different tissues of the body. Produced in the adrenal cortex, the same area as DHEA. It is elevated in the early morning and lowest at nighttime prior to going to bed. So in other words, and I'll have a chart to demonstrate that in a few seconds here, it is highest in the morning when you get out of bed and lowest in the evening, because human beings are diurnal creatures. We follow a daytime pattern of energy opposite to that of nocturnal creatures. We have the most amount of energy early parts of the day when the sun comes up, and the lowest amount of energy when the sun goes down. We are meant to get up in the morning when the sun comes up, and we're meant to go to bed when the sun goes down. It is a natural anti-inflammatory in that it helps reduce inflammation throughout the body. It enhances epinephrine activity. Epinephrine is just a nice, eloquent term for adrenaline. So cortisol and adrenaline actually are first and second cousins, you might say. Suppresses the immune system. Now you might say that's bad, but in certain instances that's good in fight or flight scenarios, because you want all of your energy going towards tissues of the body, such as the muscles and such as the brain. Aids in fat, carbohydrate, and protein metabolism. Increases glucose utilization for the central nervous system. Once again, it helps to shuttle energy to the brain and to the nerves of the body. Suppresses gastric emptying and digestion. Now, in fight or flight scenarios, once again, if you're running from a wild animal, or you're out camping one day and you walk back into your tent and there's an 8-foot rattlesnake sitting there greeting you, you're probably going to get a little bit of an adrenaline pump, along with cortisol. Cortisol helps adrenaline, adrenaline helps cortisol. That's called the fight or flight. You want all the blood going where? Not towards digestion, but to your legs and to the limbs of the body so you can get the hell out of there, into the brain. It is a stress hormone. Now, it is a stress hormone for intermittent bouts of stress only, not long-term bouts. It is not meant to do that. It is a catabolic hormone, once again, in that it breaks tissues down. It enhances short-term memory. There's an area of the brain, the frontal lobe of the brain, called your hippocampus, which is very, very linked to cortisol. It has a key to every bodily tissue in the system. Cortisol can get into every tissue of the body. That can be good, that can be bad. Now here's a look at a normal cortisol output. 6 a.m. in the morning, it's near 100%. But throughout the day, 12 o'clock has a decline. By 4 o'clock, it has a decline. By 10 o'clock, night time, it's time to talk to the Sandman. It is at its lowest point. That is a normal cortisol rhythmical pattern output. Here's an abnormal output. Look how low it is in the morning here. This person probably has a hard time getting out of bed in the morning. Goes up around 12 o'clock. Now between 12 and 4 you start that little mid-afternoon decline that some people experience at work. And at nighttime, where should it be? It should be a little bit lower than that, but here it is around almost the 70% range. This person probably has a hard time getting to sleep. Maybe they're spending too much time on the computer late at night, or watching too much television, too much exposure to blue light. Let's compare the two here. Here's the good one, normal output. Here's the not so good one. See how it fluctuates. There should be a more smooth pattern to this, whereas this one is a more erratic pattern. This person probably also has some mood swings during the day. Something is stressing this person out big time. Don't guess, test. Now that's what I offer as a certified practitioner for functional diagnostic nutrition. I've been certified to take saliva samples, urine samples, blood samples, pathogen samples to find out exactly what is going on with certain issues of your body. And I'm not a doctor. That's not what I do. Look at it like this. I test to find out some of the hidden stressors that are causing the complications. I'll repeat that. Find out hidden stressors that are causing the complications. Now, what are hidden stressors? Hidden stressors can be something nutritional that you're eating. It could be emotional. It could be not getting enough sleep. It could be environmental. Maybe you're exposed to certain chemicals that you shouldn't be around. But something is pulling you down and something is taxing the system. Now, with the cortisol test, it is a saliva test. It means you spit in a test tube 4 times a day. You can do it in your house. You can do it in the comfort of your home or your business. You just have to take the tubes with you. So you spit in the tube early in the morning, 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 10 o'clock. You pack up the samples, you ship them off. The company sends back the results to me as a practitioner. You and I sit down and we go over your test results. Simple as that. Now, what are we looking for? Highlights of circadian rhythm issues throughout the day. Elevated, here are some examples here. If your cortisol, let's say is high in the morning, it probably means you have some sort of a blood sugar drop. What if it's high at noontime? Possibly sensitive to specific breakfast foods or snack foods or coffee. What if it's high in the mid-afternoon? Possibly some allergies or environmental sensitivities. What if it's high at nighttime? Overactive immune system or parasites. Parasites or bugs. Now, here's where going to the doctor to get a blood test for cortisol is not exactly as accurate as you might think. You might have normal total sum, but it doesn't really measure the rhythmical activity of your cortisol during the day. I don't think you'd be too fired up about taking a blood draw 4 times a day. Therefore, you do it with saliva. We're looking at a snapshot of the current phase of your adrenal dysfunction. It also points a finger at possible other dysfunctions of the body, such as immune disorders, thyroid, gut issues. How often should you retest? About every 90 to 120 days. Now, here is a sample of a person that I did a test on. But let's go over the ranges here first. Now, the lab reference range is different from the FDN range because the lab reference range is not always the best range to go off of. The lab reference range changes with the populations. So if a population range increases because they're getting more disease prone, they tend to elevate or raise the range. But FDN says, for example, here's AM here, 13 to 24. Now what if you're at about a 23.99999? I mean, that's right at the edge top range, which is not always the best. FDN recommends 19 for the AM. What about noon? Lab range 5 to 8, FDN is 7. Afternoon, lab range 4 to 7, FDN is 6. Nighttime, lab range 1 to 3, FDN is 2. Cortisol sum, 23 to 42. Now what if you're right out of 42? Is that good? Not necessarily. Not necessarily good. FDN range is a 34. So you're looking more at the middle portion of the range. DHEA, we measure that also with this test. The DHEA here, lab range is 2 to 10, FDN range is 6 to 7. Now we add these two together. There's an equation they use. Don't ask me how they do it, but they do it. It's a cortisol to DHEA ratio. That should be about a 5 to 6. Let's look at this person's results here, shall we? The morning cortisol, 19.9. Pretty good. That falls within both of these ranges here, FDN and lab range. Cortisol at noontime is 7.2. Pretty good. Afternoon, 5.7. Pretty good. Nighttime cortisol, 1.6. Right in the middle, pretty good. Total sum, 34.4, which is, roughly mid-range. DHEA average, 6.2, which is good because remember, DHEA counters cortisol. Right in the middle. Cortisol to DHEA ratio, 5.5. Pretty good. Now let's take a look at the next one. Elevated cortisol. I'm not going to go over these ranges again here. Right there. Now let's take a look at this one. I do remember this person here that I tested. Look at that morning cortisol. 30.7. Way, way above the optimum range. Not even within the lab reference range. 30.7. This person here is doing something before they go to bed at night that is stressing them out big time. Because when they get up in the morning, their blood sugar is low. So cortisol kicks in big time to compensate. Okay, the noon number is 3.6. See how it goes up, way, way up in the morning when she gets out of bed? It was a woman here, by the way. And by 12 noon, she is at a 3.6. That is well, well below reference range and FDN range. Afternoon, 5.7, within range there. Nighttime, 2.1, that's within range. Her cortisol sum is a 42.1. Now, what a doctor might tell this person is, well, you're not that far over. Just take a couple pills or maybe take a couple yoga classes and you'll be all right. You'll be within range. Not good enough for me. I want to do better than that. Look at that DHEA average here. Not even a 1. Not even a half of a 1. 0.42. This person will develop some serious metabolic disorders if this is not taken care of. Look at that cortisol to DHEA ratio, 100. In fact, that's the highest I've ever seen in anybody I've tested. That is high, folks. That is high. Now, let's talk about elevated cortisol readings. The implications of that. Elevated stubborn belly fat. You get fat around your waistline. Increased blood sugar, which can lead to increased insulin, which can lead to blood sugar fluctuations. Not good. Increased cravings and appetite. By the way, you could be full in terms of eating and still have cravings. Just want to make that distinction there. Increased insulin levels, which leads to increased inflammation. Lowers metabolism, which leads to elevated sleep issues. Lowers thyroid stimulating hormone, which can adversely affect the conversion of T4 to T3. Thyroid is a pretty important area for metabolism, wouldn't you say? Suppresses bone formation. Osteoporosis, possibly. Lowers hippocampus function. There again, there's that short-term memory I talked about earlier. Weakens sex hormones. Low libido. Don't want that. Muscle wasting. You're losing muscle. You're wasting muscle, which is giving way to more fat, obviously, and just not very healthy. Suppresses secretory IgA. Now that is an immunoglobulin located in the gut, which is part of your immune system. When that lowers, your immune system starts to really tank. And that will elevate the risk of gastrointestinal infection, leaky gut, Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, it lowers frontal brain lobe capacity, which can lead to mood swings and lower willpower. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you can have depressed cortisol, and that usually happens after you've had a series of elevated cortisol, because eventually the adrenals will give out. They won't die necessarily, but they will give out, and other things will compensate for it. For example, if you get to the point of adrenal fatigue where your adrenals cannot produce enough cortisol, epinephrine will take over, which is adrenaline. Now, adrenaline is reserved for big time emergencies only. You don't want adrenaline taking over for cortisol because you will be wired and tired, and that is not a good thing. Okay, depressed cortisol, sugar cravings, cold body temperature, low blood pressure, allergies, sensitivities. The brain needs blood sugar, but with low cortisol, the body responds with adrenaline replacement, which elevates blood sugar. There you go, I just talked about that. Because of adrenaline elevating blood sugar, insulin will counter with lowering of blood sugar, which causes severe sugar fluctuation. So you've got blood sugar that's going up and down and up and down and up and down. You're just a mess. Depression and stressed out feelings, hypoglycemia, shakiness, lightheadedness, also associated with seasonal affective disorder, SAD, particularly in the winter time when it's real cold and dreary out. Let's take a look at these numbers here. 13.1, within range, but still not acceptable. 4.2 at noontime, too low. Afternoon, 2.9. Nighttime, 0.8. Cortisol sum is 21. DHEA average is 1.9. Now that's still pretty low. Look at that cortisol to DHEA ratio, 11.1. Still in a very catabolic state. Now, why should you test? Well, we need to evaluate steroidal hormone balance. Now, you hear a lot about hormone balance today, and I want to take just a second to talk about that. Now, I am an athletic trainer, fitness and sports trainer, but I'm also a person who wants to help people get better. I want them to be able to find natural ways to heal. So, having said that, there are people in my profession who are chiropractors, who are therapists, who are trainers, who will just say, take this supplement, take this supplement, take that supplement. That is not always the answer, folks. You have to get to the core root of what is causing the problem, not put a band-aid on the problem. So, for example, if you have low testosterone, is it really low testosterone? Or is it the fact that maybe you have low DHEA, and you have low DHEA because you're not consuming enough fat in your diet? So what would someone tell you to do? Let's say a trainer or a doctor. Take a drug for that particular problem, or take the supplement just to elevate your testosterone levels. But the problem is not testosterone, it's upstream from the testosterone. It also could be your cortisol, because cortisol is robbing pregnenolone. Pregnenolone feeds into DHEA. DHEA feeds into testosterone. So what is the problem there? But you need more testosterone, right? You're piecemealing the problem. You're putting a band-aid on the situation instead of actually going deep, deep, deep and taking a look at what the real problem is. Moving on here. We're taking a picture of melatonin and circadian rhythms. Melatonin is a sleep hormone, as you well know. That is adversely affected with elevated cortisol. To determine natural, functional, nutritional techniques for relief and correction. I believe in nutritional therapy. I believe in nutritional therapy. I do not believe in just applying supplements and drugs. Now, I'm not saying I'm anti-supplement necessarily. That I believe there are certain supplements that you have to take at times. In fact, if you're in a life-threatening situation, hey, go to the doctor, get some sort of medication. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you to go tell your doctor, well, this guy in this podcast said I should just get rid of all my medications. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying take a look at the core root of the problem. And if you are taking medication, perhaps within a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you can slowly wean off the medication. Moving along. Provide clues regarding miscommunication, malfunctions, location, hidden stressors, and blocking factors. Adrenaline can enhance, not adrenaline, cortisol. Cortisol can enhance or it can block communication from the hypothalamus, which is your brain, to the pituitary, to the adrenals, and to the thyroid, because they're all part of the same network. And by the way, so are the gonads in the ovary. They all produce hormones. And what did I say about cortisol earlier? It has a key to every tissue in the body. If it gets out of control, it's like corrosive battery acid getting into your system. It's like a cancer. It can eat away tissues. It can also enhance because cortisol is an anti-inflammatory. When it gets out of control, it can be very bad. If it stays within a certain balance, it could be life-enhancing. What's next? Well, give me a call. Email me. Get on Facebook. Look up Innovative Sports Training, and we can communicate more about what you need to do next. But besides that, what do I offer in my testing and screening? Body composition, which is body fat. A functional movement screen, which is movement through space. I measure stability, mobility. We come up with an exercise therapeutic type program for you there. The adrenal profile, which was the crux of the topic today. The mucosal barrier. The mucosal barrier runs from your eyeballs down to your anus, your butt. And it's all mucus. Bugs can get in there. Inflammation can get in there. It can cause some liver problems. It can cause, obviously, gut problems. It can cause sinus problems. Let's take a look at that. And there's a certain specific test for that. MRT, food sensitivity. Food sensitivity is not the same as allergies. Allergies are more life-threatening. Sensitivities are just a step below that. But sensitivities, if not handled, can turn into allergies. But what that is basically is we need to find out what foods are possibly causing you some complications. And everybody has certain types of foods that will elicit an immune response. Certain foods more than others. Now, when you eat food, you don't want that food to elicit a huge immune response, because that means that the immune system is now going to go into certain overload scenarios and can produce cortisol. And you don't want that. You want everything to be balanced. Now, I'm going to do a whole video presentation, blog presentation on food sensitivity. Pathogen parasite testing. There are certain bugs that can get into the system of the body, and that's also related to immune system. If your immune system is not very strong, those bugs, those parasites can do some pretty nasty things. Physical fitness, physically fit, sports performance testing. I also work with athletes and testing you in certain athletic type of movements. Now, here are my websites. You can take a look at those, jot those down. And at the bottom here, that is my email address. You can email me also. My screen is not, there we go. Folks, I'm going to just say this. The presentation is over here for the most part. Guys, I look forward to working with you. give me a call. We can talk. This has been a joy for me to present this to you today. I'm in the business of helping people. I'm just not out to make money. I'm a business person, yes, but I'm also out to help you. And give me a call. We can talk more about this. Hope you enjoyed today's presentation. I look forward to hearing from you, and God bless.